Hello fellow creators. In this video, I'm looking forward to bring your attention to Astro 2.0 and one of its biggest features, biggest addition, content collection API that's gonna simply blow your mind. It's gonna take your content authoring experience to the next level. And you'll see once you have experienced the amazing DX that Astro 2.0 ships with for your content, that how impossible it is to go back and how irresistible it is to not just use it. I hope you find this video educating. Let's dive in. Let's start with a bit of walkthrough of the project. We are using Astro 1.6.13 and we are using an open source theme called Astro Ink. Oh, and let's see how this theme is organized. So if you see, we have a source folder, and within the source folder we have pages, and then pages are classified across multiple type of content that this theme is allowing us to serve, which are kind of the blog pages, which are hosting all of the blogs that you see here. And then we have a drafts page for kind of serving the drafts, like posts that are supposed to be published in the future. Conventional Astro folder structure where you have a pages directory inside the source directory, where you can classify your content as per the different categories they serve. Like you could have a blog folder, you could have a draft folder, you could have a text folder, and then you can use Astro Magic to identify how to generate the pages statically, right? So now if you see this get static path, it basically goes inside the block directory over here and it filters out all of the blocks there, and then it identifies all of the tags, and based on all of the tags it dynamically renders all of the tag pages, which get compiled into dedicated pages at compile time. Now this is a conventional structure you can expect to find in any of the pre-Astro 2x built sites. Now let's see how this changes with Astro 2.x. Now this particular Astro theme is using Astro 1.6.13. So first thing first, let's just install the latest version of the Astro. Let's go ahead and add Astro to our project, Astro latest as a development dependency. Now as Astro 2.0 is installed, let's see it running. Let's just do yarn dev. This should kickstart the server. Now the theme is running, right? Once the theme is running, let's just see how a single post works. So we have a post over here which is being served by this particular markdown file. We have several properties defined for the metadata properties of this post, which are currently passed as a front matter by Astro build, and then it serves the tags, the title, the author, the images, and everything. If you change this to something like Jamstack and then SSR, it will just work. You'd be able to see this over here. If you change this to Astro 2.0, it will simply work. And then if you change it to something like 100%, type safe MD and MDX experience, it will just work, no problem with that. So this is now our Astro 2.0 build running, all fine with all of the live reload goodness and all, and the theme is also kind of working just fine with all sort of classifications that are done on top of how the posts are organized. If you just say take the image from over here and then you paste it just over here and paste it, you'll see it working just fine. So in preparation of Astro 2.0, what you'll have to do is you'll have to make sure that the package.json file reflects to the latest version of Astro, and then you have all of the core dependencies updated to the latest build. So don't leave the integrations like framework integration, with the previous versions or with the stale version. Update all of them so that all of the packages point to the their latest versions, and you don't get yourself in some gochas, and you don't get yourself into some gochas where you spent hours fixing some odd issues. Because I definitely got into a issue that was getting awkward because the theme was pointing to a old version of the Astro salt, right? So now we have everything running just fine. The title, descriptions, and everything are kind of getting passed properly and are able to kind of render a perfect post layout page. Now we'll see the different features that Astro 2.0 brings to the table. First of all of these features is that you get 100% type safety, which means that currently the attributes that you maintain with each of your markdown file or MDX files have no way to guarantee that they meet a certain contract, that they meet a certain structure, right? If you just go ahead and remove something like other, and if you see the post, it will work just fine because there are kind of conditions and checks and everything, right? What if you kind of just remove something like title and description, right? Anybody can do this sort of mistakes, right? uh, or what if somebody does, or you only, not somebody, does this, right? So this leads to a bit of inconsistency with how you are managing your content, right? Because you can definitely put conditionals and checks and all, but there are certain things about this particular structure that you would like to always maintain, so that every time your post has minimum sufficient attributes to render the post properly, right? So how we'll make this sure is, previously what you used to do is say that you are kind of creating a layout for a Astro post. What we used to do is you had things like post Astro, which kind of combine everything like a layout, a header, a menu, components, right? That kind of eventually kind of combine together, and then you put conditions like this: other name, other Twitter, check everything, right? Use the value from the manifest or put a default value, and eventually render everything with proper condition and all, so that your posts are eventually rendered properly. There's no type safety around it, right? You can put an interface over here, but it's all loose typing, right? You'll always have to keep in mind that the post follows a certain structure, and then you'll always have to be very specific about the condition and the values and all of such things, right? That are kind of based around the particular structure of your posts, right? Now Astro 2.0 kind of brings full 100% type safety to the table, which means that this could be automated. You won't have to kind of remember and recall. You can just put a rule around the metadata. You can put a rule around the front matter that you maintain with the post, and you can do it in a pretty organized fashion, where you will just tell the schema of your post. Like you can just define a structure which tells whether the title will be a string or not, whether it should have some minimum character length or not. You can have something like a description also kind of specified in a similar manner. So you can kind of define a core structure that tells what are the core keys about your particular content type, and what are the validations that could be performed around the content types. And then you can let Astro figure out the actual front matter while validating that the structure or the minimum sufficient property contract is met. And then you'll also get 100% type safety and intelligence. So let's just see how this entire thing works. Let's just see the official description of the content collections, right? So Astro 2.0 aims to tackle an overlooked problem in modern day development. Working with Markdown and MDX is hard because they are simple files, right? And then you put certain attributes, right? But it's all kind of your responsibility to eventually make sure that the attributes are following a certain structure, right? And that's what this document piece also tells, that when you have hundreds of different files, blog posts, newsletters, products, it can be impossible to keep consistency in check. One missing or misspelled from front matter property, and your entire website can crash, and you won't have a clue or an idea how to fix it, right? Now what Astro 2.0 does is it reimagines the developer experience around content with the new content collections API. It can let you organize the markdown and the MDX files into different collections like blog, newsletter, products, and take care of the rest like schema validation, SEO best practices, informative error messages, automated generated types, as well as inline type errors, autocomplete, and more. We already noticed that this particular aspect of error is very much improved now, right? Uh, if I run this server again, you see that unlike the previous version of the Astro, you get very detailed errors around your content entries and all. Now let us just remove the title and the description and see how it works now, right? It got removed, right? What if you miss a colon over here, right? You see a very detailed error. Says that within this markdown file, right after the layout property, you have an error with the title. Astro compiler is not able to figure out what to do about the value, right? And then it shows a stack trace that YAML parser was not able to parse the description because it encountered a value that it wasn't expecting, right? And you can also open this file directly in the editor, right? So now we are right back in our editor at the line where we have a issue, right? So we can just revert this back to the correct structure, save it, and boom, you have the page rendered properly now. Now let's just see how content collection just improves the DX around the content building and content validation and parsing and stuff, and takes it to the next level. So let's just start with the collection page. If you can see here, we have a blog listing page, which is listing all of the content that could be found inside a directory. So if we have a structure like a page Astro layout file, which is currently scanning all of the files that are available within a directory, and then it's sorting all of the files, and then it's kind of calling the page function to list all of the content previews, right? If I can just show you the explorer, we have 5 markdown files, and these files are getting scanned by Astro Globe, and then the files are getting rendered through a post preview list component, which is just looping over all of the post items and then using the post preview Astro component to render all of the post previews, right? So we'll start with the very first thing we'll have to kind of define to work with the connection, right? So thus far we are using Astro Globe, but we want to use the Astro content collection API. And how we actually use the content collection API is we first have to create a directory inside the source folder called content, and within that we can create subfolders to denote or specify a certain content type. So you could have a folder for something like a newsletter. Similarly, you can have a folder for blog. You can have a folder for media. You can classify your content, and based on your classification you can just create groups, folder groups, and subfolders within the content directory to correctly organize the content pieces. You can also have subdirectories like docs and, right? So you have that level of flexibility. Once you have that, let's see how we can go about it, right? So first you'll have to go inside the source directory. There you'll have to create a folder, content. Make sure that your dev server is running as soon as you'll create this directory. You can see that Astro was able to discover and figure out that the content directory is now created, and it also auto-generated the types for you. So as soon as you'll have this directory created, you will see a directory over here, which is a Astro internal directory. You shouldn't ever kind of try to change what Astro is doing there, but just to give you ahead of what's happening here is you can see that Astro is defining TypeScript namespaces, and then within that it's creating a representation that it could use to correctly input types for the content you define inside the content directory, right? So let's just close this for now. Within the content directory, let's say we want to store blogs. So we'll create another directory called blog. S2 again triggered, and then it again generated some types. Now once we have the blog directory created, what we should do next is the next thing that Astro asks us to do is to tell about the content type that we are planning to maintain through the collections API, right? So first we'll have to create a config file. This config file is like the heart of the Astro content classification system, and then that's what it uses to infer the types for all sort of content you'd prefer to maintain through the content collection API, right? So the very first thing you'll do inside this file is you will import define collection from Astro content. Once you have this imported, you'll go ahead and you'll create a collection. Let's just say it's a block collection, and then we'll use the define collection method to tell about the collection properties, right? Let's leave it as a placeholder for now, and then eventually what we'll do is we'll have to export the collections from this file. So this collections export is like the registry, the central registry or repository of all the collections that Astro can actually see or maintain through the content collection API. Once you have this available, the very next thing you'll do is you'll import Z from the same Astro content module, and then you'll go ahead and tell about the structure that this collection can hold, right? So how we do this through Zod is we actually create a Z object, and within that we create property, and then we tell about its type, right? We do something like this. Let's just look at the property that we are currently maintaining through each of our blog posts, and also skip to the part of the documentation that's telling about how to kind of create the Zod specification for the schema, right? So we're maintaining title, description, tags, author, Twitter, date, image, and category. Let's just copy this, open the config.ts file, paste it over here, and then go ahead and quickly create types for all of the properties that could be expected to be available with the block collection. Let's just duplicate this, right? Once we have this available, let's just go ahead and change the values, description, tags, author, Twitter, date, image, and the very last thing it can hold is the category. Let's just omit this. Now The title is the mandatory property, so we'll leave it like that. Description is also a mandatory property, we'll leave it like that. String isn't the right type for tags, it's actually an array, so we'll basically change this particular type declaration to an array of a string. Other Twitter is a string, date is a string, image is a string, and category is a string. Some of the properties are not required or not mandatory, so we'll mark those properties as optional. Date is kind of mandatory property, we'll leave it optional. Other Twitter is, we can leave it like that. Tags can be empty array, and then this is good. Okay. Now once we have this saved, the Astro interpreter will automatically kind of create a type for it, right? Within Astro types d.ts file. If we'll just take a glance of what it created for us, if we'll just go ahead and look at post or blog for our scenario, it's saying that there is something called a blog, no types available yet, right? Once we have this available, what we can do now is we can go ahead and start using the collection API. Once we have this available, what we can do now is we can start using the collection API. So let's just go ahead and see our blog listing page. The blog listing page currently is listing all of the blogs. It's looking inside this blog directory, scanning all of the markdown files, sorting all of the posts by date, and then eventually using a post preview list component to render all of the posts with pagination, right? So the very first thing we'll do is we'll start referring to the new connection content directory, right? How we can do it is we'll have to import get connection from Astro content, and then we'll have to replace this particular instance with the one that we have just imported, right? IntelliSense, it says that we can just import this block collection. Once we have this imported, all posts can be inspected just by doing a console log if you want, right? So the new structure shall be reviewed once you import, just so that you can make any necessary adjustment if you are kind of relying on the properties available out of the block for some rendering needs. Okay, there is a issue over here. Let's just remove this, no block so far, which is all right. Now since it wasn't able to find any content within the block directory, let's just go ahead and take one of these pages and place it inside the block directory, right? As soon as we did it, we noticed an error. Now what the error is telling to us, right? Let's just review. It's saying that kind of properties of undefined reading date and all. Why? Because the property changed, right? Let's just review the values that the listing API is kind of giving to us, right? So we're getting an array of object with ID, slug, body, connection, data, and render. Let's just review the components that are currently integrated with this page. What we did is we paginated, we rendered it in post preview list, we passed on the data property to post preview list. Now, is there a data property available? Let's just see what the data property holds now. Page dot data So page.data is the same structure. If you provide page, it has presentation related properties. If not, then the structure is maintained. But somewhere there's a change in this structure. Let's just review the post preview list component. It's just looping over the post and then passing on the post to post. It's just looping over the all. It's just looping over all of the post and then passing on the post to this post preview component. Now within this post preview component is trying to access few properties that are not accessible, right? So let's just open the post preview component. It's trying to access front matter property to identify the post, and then it's trying to access the URL, and it's trying to access both of these properties from Astro props post, right? Let's just review what it's currently receiving. Remove this console log. Any other console log? No console log anymore. Let's just go back to the previous component and see what this component is receiving now. Console log. Astro props. It's receiving an object, and within that object it's receiving the same structure, post with ID, slug, body, and other things, right? So what we can do here is we can remove the props post and we can access the post just like this, right? And then there is no URL property available with this. We have a root level post object, and then we have a connection and data within the post itself, and then we have a render property again on the post itself, and then a class property parallel to it, right? So let's just remove the URL part from here and try to access the individual properties, right? So we have a data property available. We are interested in this because we are using front matter in the post previews. So we'll access the data property and we'll rename this as a post. Do we need the ID or slug? Yeah, we do need the slug to generate the URL to the posts. So we'll just take the slug over here and won't use any other properties at this point. Right, let's just save the values. So we are seeing the error over here for the URL. Let's just change this to slug. Yeah, it worked for us, right? So now we can see the content being imported from the content directory and rendered in the blog listing page. We have just one markdown content available in the directory, so there's just one post preview available against it. Let's just fix one more thing. Since we are directly using the slug, which is just like the URL to this particular page, if I can show you here, then if I hover over this particular link, it says that the blog isn't prefixed to it, right? So we can modify this here only. We can just kind of use a backtick notation and then place blog over here and then snag to correct the URL so that it can directly lead to the blog page, because that's where we want to eventually see the blogs, right? So now let's just try and open this particular page. It failed for us, right? It says that the page isn't available. Why that's the case? So the case is the content is not available here in the blog directory anymore. It's available inside the content directory, right? So we'll have to create a page that could receive the slug and eventually render the content page. Let's just go ahead and create a new file in this directory. New file, slug, Astro. Okay. What we'll do here is we'll import the get collection API, Astro content, and then we'll have to receive the slug and we'll have to send back any of the pages that could be passed dynamically or at the compile time to render onto the slugs, right? So eventually we must be using something like async function get static paths, right? And you should ideally return an array with objects with two key properties, one being the params and another the props. The param should match the qualifier that we have used with the file name. So it should be something like slug and whatever you see from the collection API's response, right? And the prop should be the actual object you would like to pass to the page. So it could be something like a post, right? So let's just go ahead and fill this up. The very first thing we'll do here is we'll take up all the entries. Like let's just call it blog entries and then call this method use the blog collection and then return by looping over it, right? So what we'll do now is we'll return log entries map entry an object with her params slug. The slug could be the entry slug, right? So entry slug, it's all you are getting through the hint, right? So you have body collection data ID render and slug. So we'll go ahead and use entry slug, and then for props you return the post entirely. Let's call this entry. Okay, now let's just call this, let's just leave this as entry. Okay, so now we have a param return for the slug and we have an entry returned, right? Now let's just go ahead and see what we are getting out of the props and the params, right? So we'll do Astro props access over here, Astro props, and we'll access this entity that we passed on through get static paths, right? This is all type in forward here, right? params is not something we are using. It's something the get static path will use to auto generate the file for you, right? So once we have this entry accessed over here, let's just inspect what does it holds in a store. So once you have this entry file available, let's just go ahead and use it, right? So let's just do something like have the data rendered here. Let's just see it in action. Okay, we're getting a get static path function required for dynamic routes. Okay, so we'll have to add export over here, which we accidentally missed all along, and now we have the title being rendered here. So now the layout and the content can be so we have this rendered over here. Now we can see that the title is accessible now, right? Let's just go ahead and see how the content can also be rendered, right? So if you look at the docs, it says that the entry object that you receive out of the props have a render method, right? And how you use it is you access a content function out of it by awaiting the render property, and then you just render this content to receive the final HTML for your markdown, right? It's saved. Let's just see it in action. Now you can see that the title is there and the markdown file is fully compiled and rendered as a HTML. Okay, now let's just apply the same layout that all of the other posts inherit from, which is the post layout that's available inside the layouts directory, right? So we'll go ahead and apply this layout. Open one of the layout files. Okay, default page layout. I'll just copy this and place it over here. Change it to post. Call it default post layout or just post layout. And then what I'll do is I'll just use the post layout and place the content within it. Plus, if we look at the post layout, it expects a content prop which it uses to access the front matter, right? So we'll just go ahead and pass on the content property with the value from our entry data. Let's just reload the page. It's back now. So now we have a blog page fully rendered using the content collection API and a page totally leveraging the same API to generate pages at the compile time. Once this is done, we can just use all of these markdown files, remove the redundant layout tag, and then just select all of them and place inside the blog directory. Move it. We don't want to remain with the previous approaches, right? Now let's just see what this error is talking about. It says that the data is not of the right format. It's because this is it enclosed. Beauty of type inference is that you are able to detect front matter related issues, right? This is corrected, this is corrected. Similarly, this can be corrected. Few more files to go. The final file, spot fatigue. If there's a spot fatigue, it's gone now. So now we have this blog page fully migrated to the collection API, and individual pages also migrated to the collection API. Other pages on the site that still use the globe pattern to find the markdown files by their physical location. So we had this dependency in several places, one of which was the blog page that we just kind of migrated to the upgraded syntax. Now we can repeat the same exercise with the other pages like tags or the home page that still refer the blog by the blog's physical location. Right, so this was like a couple dependencies in several places, and all of this can be simplified using the content collection API. Right, you just need to place it in one location, define the collection schema, and then just leverage the get collection function to access it all across. Right, which is like removing that physical location locking, trying to find the blocks by their physical location. Right. So all Hackpage is doing is it's currently scanning all of the markdown file in the blog directory, and it's looking over it and passing the data to the very same component that was getting used on the blog page, right? So we'll just import get collection, replace this with get collection, replace this with blog, and save it. It worked. Cool. Now similarly, let's just open the tag page. This one again is trying to find blog by its physical location, looping over it, creating tags, and then eventually populating the tags, right? So we'll import the collection API similarly. To replace this with the collection API and replace this with just the blog. All posts are available now. Within each post, we don't have front matter now, we have data. And then data tags can be mapped post data tag includes the tag non type string. Let's just save this. So tag space did rendered, but it says no match found. Why is that the case? Oh, we have another one. Let's just quickly fix it. Use the get collection. Saved. All posts, post data. The intelligence seems to be sleepy at this point, so we'll just use our recall power to replace all of the front matter occurrences with data. Okay, everything else seems Just all right. Let's just save this. No matches found again. Why is this happening? Astro Globe. It's trying to still find our own physical location to have another index. Yes. Okay, so there was a tags index and there was a tag index, right? So many places we had this similar pattern kind of applied where we discovered content using the content's physical location and then later looped over it, right? So now let's just fix this. Get connection. This should be post data tags, right? Yep, it rebooted with all the previous layout style and stuff, right? Let's just click on this particular tag. It's working just fine. Go back to the tags, go back to another tag, open the page. It's rendering. Go back to the blog again. It's working. Go back to home again. Now we have the home, the blog, the tags all migrated to the latest content collection API, and the approach to extract the content and render the pages has simplified a lot because we are no more bound to the physical location of the markdown files, but we are bound by contract uh, to this content collection API, which is managing the content. Plus, it's letting us define the content type so that it can parse the content, validate it, and offer us all of the intelligence goodness, right? And this is a major breakthrough for Astro, right? Because so far with Astro 1x, all you received was a very kind of less opinion around how you should parse or validate your content. We have our site using the content collections API to maintain the content centrally and then reusing it again and again across multiple instances where the blog content is required, like the home page, the blog page, the tags, and everything. Once you have a structure like this and you have your content organized with respect to the content collections API, there are much better things you can do with the type safety of your content. We open the post preview component today. It relies on astroprops. It tries to infer the data, post, and slug, right? But this isn't typed at this point, right? If we do something like, say, astro props data or post, we are getting no benefit of type IntelliSense and all, right? So what we can do here is we can infer the collection from the collection entry type, right? We can just provide a props over here, and within the props we can tell more about the type of content this particular component receives, right? So this could be collection entry, and within collection entry this would be the block type, right? Once you have this declared, now let's just see the type inference beauty of this component. Now we have astro props, and within the props we have the post, and within the post we have be repeated with any of the astro components. Any component that relies on the block content type now can use this to precisely tell about the type of the property or the type of the props it receives, and now you have one content collection API powering not just how your content should be pulled from all over the places in your Astro application, but also all of the props that are somewhere dependent on that content collection structure. No intelligence, right? If you have a page like this, and if you go here, you can see that it says other, right? Why it happened? It happened first because we weren't correctly checking on all of the props type, right? It tried to access a property, but it did got it, and then it settled back with the default value. So we can improve this experience again by using the content collection API. We can go ahead and tell about the prop, and within the prop, we'll say that we want to receive the content, and the content would be of the collection entry type, and the collection entry will take a blog, and it will rely on its data property, right? As soon as we do this, you'll see that it's erroring around the other property and the other image property. What's happening? Because if you recall, we initially didn't describe other and other image as a mandatory or optional property of the core content collection schema that we created for the blog post, right? As soon as we'll save this, that's erroring, but you are still able to see the experience. But as an author, as somebody who's working with the site, you get a hint that the other property or the other image property isn't available. Now we can just go ahead and change the content collection API to indicate that other and other images are as important or probably not important as far as the collection API is considered. Because by default, the Zord API actually removes any property that it doesn't recognize. So other and other images, though we were using it in the post layout, weren't described and weren't known to the collection API, right? So we can go ahead and tell about the other property, which is again going to be a string, and other image property, which is again going to be a string, right? Since these are optional property, they can be turned into optional. We are not kind of making it mandatory to have the other, but if we make it mandatory, what will happen, right? Let's just make it a mandatory property, right? We got error, content entry formatter does not match a schema, right? Does not match content, no other is a required property. So now you have the structure defined at one place telling about all of the keys this particular collection can expect to receive, right? So now let us go ahead and add the other property, and it's working out, right? Every post must have a other. If you still want to use a fallback, just turn it to an optional property, right? You can go ahead and add more strict restrictions around the properties that you have declared for this particular schema. You can go ahead and you can use something like max and tell about the max character this title could expect to receive, right? To set include your configuration fit to pass source for import and receive because the category invalid JS syntax. What's happening? Because what if we just change this to Astro 2.0, right? So the special characters are gone now and it's happy. What if we repeat this multiple times just to see if the length is checked properly, right? turn on the stream must contain, so you get the validation kicked in, like a stream must contain at most 100 characters, right? You can customize the message if you want. You can just go ahead and say the title length must be less than or equal to 100 cas. The title length must be less than or equal to 100 cas. You can go ahead and play with all of the Zord properties. You can open their official docs, or you can watch one of my earlier videos that cover Zord in depth, and go ahead and create a schema for other content pieces you are having with your Astro application, and see the real power of the collection API. So besides the content collections API, which adds schema validation, SEO best practices, informative error messages, generator types, and all the goodness that you'd expect to have around managing content, Astro 2.0 also ships with something called hybrid rendering, which lets you mix static content with dynamic content that's actually rendered on the server with like a Node.js runtime or Cloudflare worker or something like that. We noticed all along that the error experience is now fully overhauled, redesigned, reimagined, and we are able to get to the root of the issues very quickly and very easily, right? And it has several dev server optimizations, which is always the focus, I must say. Even with Astro 1.0 and now with Astro 2.0, what we always see is the speed is always improving for the content updates and other things that we do in the development mode. Everything is near instant. Us behind the scene, Astro 2.0 now uses Vite 4.0, which is the latest and the greatest version of Vite. And there is now a public Astro roadmap for anybody to access and see what they are planning next to ship. So you can easily go and see what's up there in the store now. Hope this video gave you enough reasons to migrate from Astro 1.0 to Astro 2.0. You are able to see the value in using the content collection API. See you in the next video. Bye bye.